take a deep breath. Get it out of the way.
All right.
You're not gonna take a deep breath. That was it.
I guess evidently it was just.
Okay. You're just like, we're having to do this again.
I'm not all the way awake yet, so yeah.
All right. Hey, how about we nosh on some celebrities today?
Okay, what do you got in mind?
Well, there's a I mean, I guess not just celebrity, but there's a growing list of culture influencers, from celebrities to some academics, who are all recently converting to Christianity. And it's like a rush of them. So I guess I would use maybe three examples. So an academic, and I can't remember her name, like Ariane Hirsi or something like that. By the way, this is a good moment for us to pause
Oh yeah, all right.
and make a point about something. I have no idea who this person's name is, and I don't even have a cell phone to look it up. This isn't even as good as Joe Rogan, where he's got a guy like looking stuff up on the side. This is not scripted, ladies and gentlemen, and
We're speaking off the cuff.
yeah, I think there's been a couple of podcasts where I think people thought that we were talking in an official capacity, because you're always a pastor, right?
Well,
But there's the pulpit, and then there's like, we're just sitting here recording this.
as if we'd done a
You know
bunch
what
of
I mean?
research ahead of time on this specific topic, and
Or like our
come
thoughts.
up with
Our thoughts
our
are
well-formed pastoral
yeah.
opinion about.
No, this is not a paper for school. This is not a sermon. By the way, this is a good time to point this out. If you think that pastors just get up there in the pulpit and just speak off the cuff in the pulpit, because maybe some people think that. You might think that the reason this is no different than the pulpit is because you think that we just get up in the pulpit and just do our thing. We don't. We've got hours of study and editing and, kind of putting things together in a good way.
An attempt to be honest about the integrity of what the text actually says, and
Yeah, and where is it okay for us to insert our own personality and opinion, and where is it not okay? We need to get out of the way and just let the text of the scriptures speak. So we are neither giving you just our personal opinion in the pulpit, nor are we preaching from a podcast. So you gotta kind of wrap your head around which context this is. This is just two dudes who follow Jesus,
who happen to be pastors.
Who happen to be pastors, and we're just talking about stuff off the cuff. So don't let this be something you listen to like, oh, I'm gonna take that to the bank or whatever. Like, it's just two guys talking, because if we go to the bar or something and we have a drink, we do this just regularly.
Well, in some ways, I feel like this is the idea behind the get inside our minds is we'll just sit and talk about random stuff.
Right. But you don't get the chance to like kind of eavesdrop on our conversation when we're just having a beer. That was what this podcast is supposed to be for you. Like, if you cared what goes on in a pastor's head, this is what goes on in a pastor's head. You might like it or you might not like it, or whatever. You might find it interesting or not. But this is like listening to us at the bar, except it's not as good as the bar, because we don't have a beer in our hand right now. But we usually sitting here just sipping on a cup of coffee. But yeah, so I don't know this gal's name.
Say back to your point.
Yeah, she's
academic.
She was raised Muslim in Somalia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think it's Ariane Hirsi or something is her last name. She left Somalia and moved to Europe because she saw through what was going on in her society in Somalia in terms of Muslim religion, its influence on Somalian culture. So she left to escape, essentially, moved to the Netherlands. She is smart as a whip. She got in with the right people, went through the university system in Europe. She's a scholar, okay? She was one of these calling for no religion, not just she was anti-Islam because of her upbringing and her bad experiences with her upbringing. She was one of these secularists, like a lot of academics today, who say, well, if we basically just get rid of God, then we'll be left with nothing but pure reason, and societies, specifically Western societies, will do better. She's converted to Catholicism. And when somebody when somebody asked her, like, what's going on, she said, I'm still trying to figure out the theology. I'm trying to figure out the doctrine. I go to Mass. I'm talking with my priest. I'm trying to wrap my head around Jesus and divinity and humanity. And she said, that's all hard, which is a fair statement.
Yep.
But notice who's admitting that this is hard. A premier academic who influenced European and American thinkers is admitting, oh, you mean Christian theology is not just for children in Sunday school? It's actually hard and it's for adults? Like that's who's having to admit this right now.
Or just to have to go through the process of the thought of, well, I'm going to be anti-God. We don't need God. I'm going to completely remove it because somehow we'll be better off if I can just rely on myself and our own senses and our own reason, like you said. And then I'm curious, at least, as far as, I don't know if you know the details or not, but what's that process look like then to get to the point where you're floored and you realize that starts to fall apart?
Well, that's what she said. That's what she said in this interview I read.
Okay.
So this was like a written interview, and she was talking about her conversion. She said, "So I'm still trying to wrap my head around theology because that's hard. See, kids, it's hard." And she said, "But the reason I converted is because, in large part, I saw that what we believed as Western academics is wrong. We thought that if we got rid of God, we'd be left with reason and society would function better. Society is more divided and torn apart than it's ever been, and we're left with humans acting a little bit like animals." And she said, "So it doesn't work. You have to have God." During that time, by the way, she didn't dismiss the idea of that there is a God. Just to be clear. She didn't know. She was like an agnostic. She was more agnostic than atheist. But she said, you have to have God even just for society, that this isn't working,
Mm-hmm.
And so she converted in some small part to basically just give up and run up the white flag and say, we're tearing ourselves apart because we're saying that we can live apart from God, and evidently we cannot. So, so there's academics like her. There's celebrities. This might seem weird because she's kind of a political pundit. Like she comments a lot, but like Candace Owens, I would consider her a celebrity. Like she's not really an academic in her approach to politics, or she's sort of a right wing commentator.
It's not that she's not intelligent. It's just. She also probably picks her spots for.
Oh, I think she's very intelligent. Yeah. I wish she'd run for first ever woman president. I'd vote for her. But anyway, she's a right wing commentator, and sometimes she goes too far in her comments, and sometimes you listen to her and you go, man, she's really spot on, right? Because she's very smart. But it's not an academic approach, is my point. So she has a show. She's getting views and clicks and likes, and so it's celebrity stuff, right? So that's what she does for a living. And so she recently converted to Catholicism as well. And there's just a lot of these kinds of people who are making this move. Russell Brand, I don't know how many of you listening or have ever seen anything Russell Brand was in. Russell Brand for a while was a Hollywood type celebrity. He's from England. He's English. And when I say he's English, what I mean by that is he is English, like cup of tea and a biscuit and a like full English with the beans for breakfast. Like he's English. And
and he's converted.
He's converted to follow Christ, and he's very vocal about it. In social media right now. Now, I don't know if he's Catholic or if he's some variant of Protestant, because he's English.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about the history of churches and religion in England, and you may or may not, because of how Protestantism came to England, it often doesn't look very different from Catholicism. Like there's not a huge difference in the form of it from the outside. It looks very similar to Catholicism. So, I mean, I don't really know if he converted to Catholicism or he's some sort of Protestant, but one way or the other, the guy, he converted and he's following Christ. He's very vocal about this. And this is a guy who was always famous in the tabloids I mean, we don't have tabloids anymore, but like with the paparazzi and social media, he was famous for womanizing, drinking, drugs, all of this stuff. And now he gets on social media and he says things like, I was just trying to numb the pain, but none of this was going to make me feel better for longer than the short term. And my feelings weren't guiding me to anything that was truth. And he said, what I've come to is that Christ is the truth. So there's a huge, powerful statement that he's making there.
So I think that's interesting too. Just and I don't know a lot about him, but again, same
He got
thing.
he got baptized in the Thames River in London.
Do you know how long ago?
Recently. So, guys and gals, that proves that there's no such thing as holy water. It's the power of the word, because the Thames is filthy. Just so you know, he got baptized in some dirty water, but he's definitely following Christ now.
So, see, here's what I'm thinking about it, because knew some of the same kind of thing of womanizing and drinking and drugs, and then even during his acting career, he had like cleaned up some of that stuff. But then I'd seen quite a bit of clips of him where he became really active politically, and he'd voice his views politically, and he was really far left in how he would talk about. He was really anti-establishment, anti-corporation, not like Noam Chomsky left, but really, really far over there, almost like we need to tear it all down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, at least out loud, between going from substances and women to politics of, what am I going to try to make sense of, and what point for him it started to double over on itself and fall apart as he's searching for the thing that's going to fill the pain, searching for the thing.
That's an interesting question. I mean, I wish we were a big enough podcast we could have him in here and interview him, because we could ask him that question. So it's
just the theme between the Somali woman and him both. It almost seems like
he's had a couple of comments that he's made here and there, but it's not like he ditched the left for the right. Mm-hmm. That's the funny thing about the comments he's made. He's sick of where all of it's going, left and right.
Yep.
And I think that's a sentiment that a lot of people can sympathize with, if not share. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people are sick of where everything's going. And he has made some comments to the effect of, it's not like politics is not involved in this conversion for him. He sees Christ as the only alternative to where the world is headed, like
how broken it is,
how broken everything is, and he sees Christ as the only alternative to where everything's headed. So I think this is interesting. So I guess the thing that makes me wonder is, this is going to be a little inflammatory to say in a Midwestern context. You know what I mean? Because Protestantism, in the broadest sense. Now, somebody's going to be out there, and Lutherans aren't Protestants, because we're not. But we are broadly, historically categorized as a part of the Protestant movement. In fact, we kicked it off. So we opened the door for it, at least. Protestantism and good, solid Midwestern values have long gone hand in hand in the heartland of America. Mm-hmm. And to talk about Christianity as sort of like a dangerous option, as the cultural alternative to what's going on in the culture, is not a place where most of the people I know in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod would feel comfortable. They wouldn't feel comfortable if that were where they were getting their mail delivered. That's not home to them. Home is a nice, quiet life where you tend your garden. We're kind of like hobbits. I don't know if you've ever read the LCMS Lutherans are a little bit like hobbits. We like the Shire. We like our little garden. We like our.
It's more of
our beer at the bar.
The default gear. You're just kind of set in, rest in.
Yeah.
And we might confirm kids, and then they go off somewhere, but then they come back. And they'll be fine. They'll be safe.
Yeah.
And it's.
I think that's the best way to describe. I think we're hobbits.
Yeah.
I do. I think we like our little beer down at the tavern, and we like our little. And we like our little quiet life. And if you're not quiet enough, if you're not conforming, there can be some social pressure that's brought to bear there. And again, that kind of reminds me of the Hobbits in the J.R.R. Tolkien books. But but we can be a little bit like that. And I'm not sure that we're always ready to offer a robust alternative, I guess is the way I want to phrase this. I'm not sure that Lutheran theology is definitely robust, but I'm not sure if culturally we're ready as Lutherans in the Midwest context to offer people a truly robust alternative to where the culture is headed. And I think that's part and parcel of the hegemony. And that's kind of a long-haired hippie word, right? Or at least academic word. The hegemony that we shared for the longest time with where the culture was.
Mm-hmm.
To be Protestant, to be something like a good old Midwestern Lutheran, was so closely aligned with where the culture and the values were at for Middle America. It was sort of like asking an Italian, well, are you Catholic?
Yeah.
Well, of course I'm Catholic. I'm Italian. Well, are you a good old American Protestant? Of course I am. I'm from Nebraska. You know what I mean? And it was kind of like, it was one of those things where it was so closely aligned that it became enmeshed. And so I'm not, and I'm saying this with a broken heart because I wish we were in a better position to offer people the reality of our theology, which is actually a robust alternative.
Well,
but culturally, the way we live as Midwestern Lutherans is a little Hobbit-like. And
well,
I don't.
No, I agree with you. I mean,
of course, hobbits ended up saving the world in those books, so. I don't know. Maybe there's hope for a role for Lutherans yet. I don't know.
I did have the image in my mind of how far could you take this, and
yeah.
and what is Sting, and being cavalier, and
I mean, we could just keep going. I actually know a guy who's one of our theologians who thought that we were more that Lutherans were the dwarves, in the mountain hoarding their gold or whatever. Like we were and the elves he thought were the Roman Catholics.
Yeah.
Anyway. This isn't an episode about the Tolkien.
Let me go back to the culture and seeing folks that are celebrities or academics or maybe just well known, maybe not even well known, but visible.
But back to that point,
yeah.
What they're finding in Christianity is the only real viable, robust alternative that can stand up hard enough and give you an alternative view of the world and the future to what the culture is pumping out in this mass sewage.
So I've had this thought this way, and I'm trying to formulate it outside my head because it wasn't really related to this. It's more just generally speaking.
Yeah.
So tell me if you think it fits. But when I look at our culture right now, broadly speaking, I'm going to say two things about it. One, if it's a Russell Brand or if it's this Somali born academic or if it's Candace Owens or other people that are, at least for our lifetimes, I think we've grown up when the people on TV, the people of renown, sort of the influencers, it's the American royalty. Mm-hmm. And there's varying degrees of it in terms of how popular. I mean, Obama was super uber popular when he ran in 08.
Yep, absolutely.
And the whole hope and change, and and it's just everybody wants to be like him, everybody, and so people latch on in a way that's similar to ways that folks in the UK would latch on to the royalty, but it's not necessarily, it's not where I actually don't have
it's fame.
Yeah,
it's notoriety. It's a popularity contest.
So that one piece of it, but then also coupled with the second part of it is that within our culture and the brokenness of it within the general eschewing of religion necessarily, and it's not categorically true, but it's there's been certain efforts to move it that way to where let's make it about reason, let's make it about choice, let's make it about whatever it might be. But within there seems to be this churn of folks that are searching and seeking, and this doesn't make sense, even as much as I might on the one side of my mouth say I'm going to say all these things that I think are true, but there's emptiness behind it. And wondering, is there an intersection coming between the two of the ways that a whole bunch of people could run after Obama like royalty, alongside the point of here's this amazing invitation to the gospel of Jesus Christ, and I'm searching and I'm looking. And here's an example I think of.
Well,
Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
If you know him, and there's the show The Chosen, and he did a bunch of work with the show because he's Catholic and he's a believer, but then they did a whole bunch of stuff with this app, and it's this prayer app, and I saw it on my phone because it was then invitations of, hey, do you have a minute to pray right now? Or, hey, invitations to pray, and wondering in what ways you're going to see things like that, or whatever it might be, that become the invitations for somebody that's churning, that's seeking, that's searching, and then
Yeah, these might be people who open a door for conversation. Obviously and ultimately, if they're chasing after a celebrity because a celebrity says that they are now with Jesus, like you mentioned Barack Obama, and people flock to that guy.
I'm not saying that's a good thing, by the way, but
Yeah, it would actually be an inoculation against the gospel because unless you're chasing after Jesus, you're chasing after
I
the
threw a
wrong
bunch of things
person.
out there, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're all good. Yes.
Right. So that's actually an inoculation against the gospel at that point because
Yep.
you're chasing a celebrity still, and it's whatever the next thing is for that celebrity. That's what you're following, but it might open the door for some conversations which might be helpful, and the place too where I think there's a difference in what's going on with some of these celebrities and academics versus someone like the royal family, for example. And I'm not sure that there's not more people outside of Great Britain, by the way, who follow the royal family than the actual British.
Yeah,
I
fair
think
enough.
they're largely over it, um, but it what I think is funny about that distinction there, or putting celebrities up against somebody like the royal family. The celebrities, that's fame. It's a popularities contest. How did they get to be popular? By going exactly where the culture dictates that you should go and not going outside of that where the culture says you should not go.
Or even being, if it is outside, it's being one step ahead, and you see it's going to go there anyway, so you're the first one there.
Right. So let me give you an example of this. David Tennant, who's a Scottish celebrity,
Mm-hmm.
was Doctor Who for a while. If you know that BBC show, it's very popular worldwide in the English speaking world. Um, David Tennant is the son of a higher up administrator in the Church of Scotland.
Okay.
His daddy was a preacher man. But when it came to LGBTQIA plus issues, he made sure he was on the front end to say everybody who thinks they're trans ought to be just blanket accepted. I mean, he was like way out front on all that stuff. Well, that's because this culture says you can't. He's the son of a preacher man. You know what I mean? Like, don't tell me he didn't grow up with a theology that would have at least said something more nuanced, about LGBTQ
So
issues.
he's purposely making a choice to either reject the theology of the church and the nuance that it could provide, or to just embrace this idea,
Or just embrace whatever the culture is going to say is going to make me popular with people and get me likes.
Yep.
And it's like, and I don't know. I mean, and maybe it's none of that. Again, if we were a
Agreed.
bigger podcast, I'd have David Tennant here. We'd ask, so your daddy was a preacher. What's up, Dave? But there was nothing nuanced in what he said. It was like this mad rush to get out in front of, no, but look at me, I'm on the right side of history baloney that people do. And it was pandering, really, is what it looked like to me, at least. It looked like pandering. And well, that's the son of a preacher man. And he's like, well, let me just get out in front where the culture says I'm supposed to be, and then I will be beloved. And that's what makes you a celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is that some of these people who would be risking the likes, who would be risking, oh, don't y'all love me because I'm exactly where you think I ought to be, some of those people are recently just saying, you know what? It's kind of like a St. Paul moment. The world is rubbish. The world is trash. It's nothing to me.
Very counterculture at that point.
Yeah, and so there is a political edge to this, and I know, again, nice Midwestern Lutherans are going to go, you got to keep your religion and your politics separate. Well, maybe that's why a lot of these people are going Catholic, because Catholics don't. They'll mix their religion and politics, and maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe it's a good thing in this case. I don't know, but I will tell you this. To not admit that there's a political edge to your theological view of the world is, I think, disingenuous. There is a political edge to your theological view of the world, because your theological view of the world will, if nothing else, will start to draw X's through certain political positions.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It may not make you pro something, but it'll definitely make you anti certain things.
Or at least to say it this way, from being somebody that grew up in Nebraska, that your political convictions may be very, very strong and they'll be very theologically based.
Right.
It's just around here in a way we grew up in a way that you just don't say them out loud.
Well, and you'd also, if you did say them out loud, you'd have to admit that there's a spectrum.
Yep.
Not all Lutherans are going to come down exactly the same place on a particular political issue.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not.
No.
That wouldn't even be. You can't get two people to agree on pizza toppings. How are you going to get? You know what I mean? But it's like so. But there is a political edge. Is my only point. That's my only point. Not that you have to align a certain way, or you're not really an LCMS Lutheran. But that if you deny that there's a political edge to your theological worldview, I think you're being disingenuous.
Agreed.
Because there's something that's influencing the way you're viewing any particular political issue. And so what these celebrities and academics are just saying out loud is that what you said was the quiet part for good old Nebraskans. Mm-hmm. They're saying the quiet part out loud, that there is a political edge to the fact that I'm choosing, because no one's choosing the institution of the church. And these people are choosing Christ, not particularly the institution of the church, but they have to choose an institution where they can belong.
Oh.
And so to choose an institution of any church body in the middle of a day and age when we're all sick of, frankly, all the institutions is countercultural. and it shows that there is sort of a political edge, that what we're doing as a society is not only not working, it's the opposite of working. It's tearing everything down. Well, and they're basically saying, there's got to be an alternative. What's the alternative? Christianity held the world together for a long time. Maybe we're wrong here.
Well, and within all of that too, this is where my brain goes a little bit. Whether that's thinking about flipping around in a way.
Yeah.
And we talked about the church here being kind of content, just like hobbits, like we're going to sit in our own little.
I think I'm going to hold up. Somebody's going to be mad at me. Somebody's going to be so mad at me with that. Just remember, hobbits end up saving the world. Don't be so offended so easily. But I'm going to hold on to that. We like our little gardens and our little.
But how do we push ourselves out the door in a way that
how do more of us become Frodo,
yes,
and Bilbo and Sam,
or just thinking about it in an intentional way, whether it's Russell Brand or Somali academic, or just the general part of our culture that's going through this churn that you're seeking and searching. And at what point, how do you be intentional to think through what's the touch point for when that person is, things are falling apart and things are doubling over, so that they're ready, that they're hearing God's word.
I just think for many LCMS Lutherans, I think the starting point would be to actually value what you have, like really value it.
Go on.
Well, because I think for so many people, and I say this as an adult convert, I converted to Lutheranism as an adult, and so to me, I just see too many people who grew up in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and it's tradition. Like my daddy was this, my granddaddy was the, and it's not that black and white. Somebody married out or somebody turned away from their baptism, or it's always complicated with families. But by and large, this is the family tradition. This is what we are. And if that's what it is, you can value it for other reasons that have to do with really great things like family, and your stability of your own identity as a person. But I don't know that you value your faith as the only lifeline somebody might actually have. If you grow up in a context where if you ask the adults around you, what does the word grace actually mean, and nobody can tell you, which I did,
mm-hmm.
It leaves you kind of lost, because maybe there's a God and maybe he loves me, but he sure doesn't like me. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what any of this really means. And then the first time you hear somebody preaching grace to you, you grab that sucker like it's the only lifeline you've got left before you drown. The
idea that grace is, well, God loves you, not only loves you, but he gives you his love,
right,
in Jesus Christ, in etc.
Right, and that he's intimately involved and cares about you. Like he You know,
Yep.
the idea that God actually loves you, like he even likes you. He just thinks you're being a bonehead, so knock it off. You know what I mean? But
Yep.
like he doesn't. He's not mad at you. He's not angry. He's not ready up there with a lightning bolt to zap you. He's the idea that you do have a lifeline, and that's the only lifeline that somebody else might ever be offered. I don't know that if you grow up in this context, I'm not sure, and it's not your fault, by the way. You've never lived without it. Like you've never lived outside the Shire. See, Hobbit works for this application. You've never lived outside the Shire. You don't know that outside of this, there's like dragons and stuff, and they burn your town down. You know, like you think it's about your garden, and then you go to the pub for a pint.
Even
you know?
if you know the dragons exist, you just know if you stay.
They're over there.
If you just stay in the Shire, you're fine.
They're over there. It's kind of like how Nebraskans talk about California. Oh, it's over there. You know, it's kind of like what? Well, you know, it's happening though. So
I just think there's got to be this point of intentionality for the church, and I mean the church broadly, more broadly than LCMS Lutheran, but the church to be thinking about what's the intentional way you're thinking about being the touch point for the variety of people that are going through this churn, and being there to be
well, but that's my
to
point
be
is that unless you can put yourself into somebody else's shoes,
yes,
and unless you can value what you have because you recognize that the scandal of grace is that you grew up in this, and why should you grow up in this and somebody else not have this?
I mean,
You know, like, does that make any sense? Like,
No,
why did you win the lottery? You know, like, why did you get to grow up in this environment where this was preached to you all the time? Unless you can value that for what it really is, that you didn't deserve this either.
mm-hmm.
Like, you were given something that was this amazing treasure. Like, somebody told you Jesus loves you.
I
Like, that's
I just read the book of Acts again recently.
yeah.
Over and over again, it's just this constant urgency and vigilance, but it's an urgency born out of not like compulsion or anything else. It's just, this is amazing. I have to go tell people that Jesus is alive.
I don't. Yeah.
And I don't think we're gonna get there. I don't mean that. But
We're gonna get there because we're too many generations removed, and that's a podcast for a different day. But I do think you can get to the point to where you value what you've been given, and I do think you can get to the point if you're intentional enough to talk to people who are not like you,
mm-hmm.
and just ask them what it feels like to be them. You're not trying to sell anything or pushing. You're just asking them, what does it feel like to be you? I think you'll get to a point where you'll see, oh my goodness, I happen to have been given the only lifeline this person's ever going to be offered, and it's Jesus Christ. I'm going to throw him the lifeline and see what happens. I don't think you get there in our context really any other way. I mean, there can be ways. I'm not clairvoyant here, you know what I mean? But like I'm saying, I personally don't see another way other than to learn to value what you've been given for more than the tradition of what it's worth, or it's worth in terms of tradition, and then to put yourself, to find a way to intentionally put yourself in someone else's shoes. That there be dragons here, you know what I mean? Like, this is real, and this is the only lifeline that someone's likely to be offered. And it's really the only lifeline that would actually save their life.
Mm-hmm.
People reach for other lifelines all the time, but none of them work. So I mean, I think that's what it is for hobbits. You just need to be aware that the fact that the dragon is on the other side of the hill from the Shire, and you say, well, it's not going to come here. That's not good enough. And there has to be at least a little bit of willingness to get on the road and throw on your cloak, and you know what I mean, like,
or even in a way find a way to bridge between letting the Shire grow.
I mean,
I don't know how far.
Now we're going outside of Tolkien's little universe over there, but yeah, but get on the road, man. Like be a little bit more, frankly, open.
Yep.
It's a vision issue. It's not a heart issue, believe it or not. There are plenty of guys I know who would talk about this kind of thing like it's a heart issue. It's not a heart issue. You talk to so many LCMS Lutherans in our context. These are good-hearted people.
They absolutely love people.
Yeah, and they actually do love people.
Yeah.
It's a vision issue. The vision stops at the end of that road over there, and it just doesn't go past. It's a vision issue. It's not a heart issue. These are good people who love Jesus and they love people. I mean, they're not good people. They're centered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're as good as people come. That's so many of the folks that I interact with on a daily basis. They love Jesus and they love people. It's a vision problem. It's not a heart problem.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit. We'll see you next time.